Good evening. I'm Gina Roberts, Voter Education Director for the Citizens Clean Elections Commission. As Arizona's official voter education agency, Clean Elections is proud to sponsor these debates. Our mission is to ensure that you have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates, ask questions about the issues that impact your life, and head to the polls with confidence. To make sure your voice is heard, please keep these upcoming deadlines in mind. October 5th, voter registration deadline. October 7th, early voting begins, and November 3rd, General Election Day. If you're watching this debate live, we want to hear from you. You can submit a question for the candidates at any time using one of the following methods. Email debates@kc-a.com, text 480-769-9511, phone 480-937-1253. Thank you for joining us and for staying engaged in our democracy. For more resources to help you prepare for the November 3rd general election, please visit our website at azcleanelections.gov. Enjoy the debate.
Good evening and welcome to the Arizona Clean Elections debate for Legislative District 8. I'm TJ LaRue, a reporter with the Arizona Agenda, and tonight I'll be your moderator. I've been writing about Arizona politics for 3 years with a focus on the legislature, elections, and municipal government. Tonight, you're going to hear from several candidates running for 2 state house seats and 1 Senate seat representing Legislative District 8 at the state capitol. LD8 is at the nexus of several municipalities and communities encompassing much of North Tempe, South Scottsdale, a bit of Phoenix and Mesa, and the entirety of the Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian community. It's primarily an urban district that historically has leaned toward Democrats, and one in which 3 Democratic incumbents are all seeking re-election. According to recent polling of voters in the district, some of the key issues on voters' minds are housing, affordability, education, and water security. Those are some of the topics we'll get to tonight. But first, I'll give a brief layout of what things are going to look like tonight. Each candidate will start with a 90-second opening statement. Then we'll spend a few minutes getting to know who these candidates are as people. After that, we'll dig into the core issues facing the district. We'll ask each candidate to explain how they would have voted on a real, or how they would vote on a real proposition that is on the November ballot. And then we'll do a round of rapid fire questions. Following that, we'll finish with a 90-second closing statement. And tonight, we're going to begin with our candidates in the Senate, followed by 2 House candidates who will be joining us. With that, let's get started. And candidates, I want to thank you all for being here. We'll start with 90-second opening statements, and the order was set randomly. This prompt is simple. Tell voters who you are and why you're running. So we're going to start with Senator Lauren Kuby.
Thank you, TJ. I'm so glad to be here. I'm Lauren Kuby, state senator in LD8, and I'm running for re-election to the Senate to continue to serve you over the interests of corporations, utilities, and lobbyists. And for decades, I served as the ASU Global Future Scientist. I led outreach at the Global Institute of Sustainability and Innovation, studying the impact of the climate crisis on our communities. And I led ASU's Stardust Center for Affordable Homes and the Family, where I researched and championed housing policy that builds healthy, happy communities. And then I served on the Tempe City Council for 8 years. I spearheaded laws that really mattered to people: affordable housing, worker safeguards, LGBTQ plus protections, climate solutions, free pre-K, and campaign finance reform. And now it's my honor to serve as your state senator. I've been standing up, speaking out, and meeting the moment. And together, we've gained major wins for our district. We secured $2 million for direct housing assistance and eviction assistance in our community. We completely eliminated ICE funding from our state budget. We took on utilities and corporations who are raising the cost of living for working families, for working people, and the work is just beginning. So I'm running for re-election because there is so much at stake for our communities, for our democracy, for our children, and for my sweet grandchildren, Rory and Marlo. I think about every day when I wake up. And so I hope you'll join me and vote to keep Kuby in the Arizona State Senate. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. Next, Bill, go ahead and introduce yourself to the voters.
Well, I'm Bill Lothridge. My family's been in Tempe since the 1930s, 1933, I think. Both sides came into the city. I was actually born in San Diego. I was 10 days old when they brought me back, but I don't remember that trip really. I was 35 years in law enforcement, 8.5 years as a Phoenix police officer. As a walking beat primarily. I did spend a year in Vice there. Then I was 26.5 years as a criminal investigator, special agent for the United States Customs Service. Law enforcement is my interest is safety for us in the community. The reason I'm running is that there was no name on the ballot as a Republican for this office. The Democrats have moved so far to the left and have so many things that are creating havoc in our communities and culture that I want to at least have an alternative. So you can compare what Lauren Kuby, who I've met and like fine, just the difference in politics is difficult for me to deal. Men and women's locker rooms, dressing rooms is just not the kind of place that I think we need to be in. So I threw my hat in the ring. So here I am I'm not a politician. I'm not a public speaker. I just have a conservative view of things, and the free enterprise system makes things work better.
Thank you, Bill. Very much appreciated. So with that, we'll move to our first round of questions. But first, a quick reminder to any viewers and voters, you can submit a question for the candidates at any time. To do that, email debates@kc-a.com. You can text 480-769-9511, or you can call 480-937-1253. So this next segment is about you, not necessarily your policy positions and perspectives, but more about what has shaped you, how you think, and who you'd be once you're in office, or when you're in office in this next term. Each candidate has 60 to 90 seconds to answer. There are no rebuttals in this round. So the first question in this round, outside of raising your family, or what's something you've built, started, or led that you're proud of, and what did it teach you? So in this round, we'll start with Bill.
Well, after I retired from the government, I started a business. My WJL investigation still operates. I've been involved in Tempe as a Kiwanian. I joined the Tempe Sunrise Kiwanis in 1979 and have been a member, and actually have been the president now for some years. We've been involved in several nonprofits in addition to the businesses. Nonprofits, the color guard, winter guard type things. I've been on the board of directors for the Walker Fire Department up in a small community out near Prescott, Walker, Arizona. I think that those efforts in terms of charity and service are important. Those are the ones where we've learned how to volunteers. You can't fire volunteers. They have to be able to want to work with you and be able to do the things that they want to do. And I don't think that the top-down model works. I like the ground up. People that are doing the work on the ground, they're the ones that need to do the work. But we have to talk to each other. We can't be yelling at each other all the time. So I think that my effort, and everybody promises this every time they go, that they'll make some effort to talk across party lines. I'm not a professional politician. I just have lived our life. We don't want to think about politics. So that's basically, I don't know what I can say other than that. I think just a calm voice is what I would like to be at the legislature.
Thank you, Bill. And Lauren.
Yeah, so I grew up in Massachusetts and from a big brawling Irish family. And my parents loved JFK. They worked in his Senate campaign in 1958, and they were working in the office, and he came in, and it was just my parents and me. I was a baby, and my dad offered JFK coffee, and realized there was no coffee shop in town. My dad ran home to make coffee in a percolator. It took him 45 minutes. In the meantime, JFK had this wonderful conversation with my mom and said, I miss my daughter Caroline so much on the campaign trail. Can I hold your baby? And he held me. And so I got the political bug early. After college, my very first job was working for Kathleen Kennedy, who is Robert Kennedy's daughter. And I worked for her creating the homeless hotline program in Boston during the time of Dukakis administration, when we saw homelessness exploding because of Reagan administration policies. And so this year, when I was able, with the budget, to bring $2 million for homelessness relief to my district, I kind of came full circle. That's not necessarily a political story, that's a personal story. It was deeply meaningful to me. And I've worked for many years being a homeless advocate. And I also have a deep background as a sustainability scientist at ASU and bringing the peoples and projects and a pipeline of ideas to city government at first and now to the state Senate. I believe so much that the world could be a better place, that we need to embrace clean energy and embrace sustainability practices and equity as well. So that's been another big influence in my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Lauren. And next in this round of About You questions, we want to ask, what's one area where you most agree with the policies of the opposing party, or you find room to come to consensus with the perspective of the party that you're not in? And we'll reverse the order and start with Lauren.
Well, there's two that come to mind: flock cameras and the infringement upon our civil rights. But I'm thinking about I'm thinking about that, as well as subsidies for billionaires, and as relates to data centers. So there is a lot of agreement in the Senate and the legislature about data centers, that we shouldn't be giving incentives to these tech bros. We especially shouldn't be giving away water and causing intense stress to our system. But we have Republicans who agree with me on this privately, but publicly they don't want to really veer away from leadership. So that's an area of agreement. I'm hoping that it seems like the dial has shifted and changed a bit in the past year, and I'm hoping in this next legislative session they'll be able to actually really make progress. And data centers should certainly not be incentivized. We shouldn't be spending $60 million a year in taxpayer money to incentivize tech bros. So I'm hoping that's an area we can really proceed and create reforms.
Thank you, Lauren. And Bill, same question to you. What's one area where you find there's room for agreement or consensus with the other party?
Well, I think I agree in part with the data centers. I don't understand why anybody or any government would give incentives to these companies to come in here when they are going to create a lot of money and tax income for these communities that they're in. So I don't think it's necessary for us to give them tax incentives to come here. But the position that they're using water inappropriately, or we're wasting money, or it's bad for us to let them into our communities, is just, I don't think, right. It's a technology. It's a new technology. The telephone was a new technology. When cars came in, there was, there's always, whenever there's a change in technology, there's controversy. So I think I could agree with Lauren in terms of the Democrats, in terms of no tax incentives for these big, large corporations come in. I don't think they need to complain about, but education, complain about billionaires. The billionaires create jobs. Data centers create jobs. But we have a problem with the way Democrats are moving. They're moving way to the left for big government, large government, lots of restrictions, and they don't let the free enterprise work. So in that respect, I'm not necessarily agreeing with restrictions and limits on how these people come into our communities.
All right. Well, there are no rebuttals in this round. With that, and thank you, candidates, for the chance for us to get to know you and how you think a little better. Now let's turn to the issues that voters care most about. And this is the core of tonight's debate. Here's the format. I'll ask a question. Both of you will get 90 seconds to respond. After you've both answered, we'll open a 60-second rebuttal window where you can either respond to something another candidate said, or you can add to your answer if there's something you left out. So first, we're going to start with a question on education. Prop 123 expired last year, and schools are now relying on one-time backfill funds to stay open. Would you vote to send a clean renewal to Arizona voters? Yes or no? And this time, we'll start with Bill.
I'm not sure I understand what that 123 was.
Prop 123 was a proposition 10 years ago that allowed the state to use the state land grant, the Arizona Land Trust to finance public education. And this year, the Arizona legislature did not renew Prop 123 and put it to voters. And it's created a major funding issue, essentially, with public schools. So would you vote to send a clean renewal to Arizona voters?
Well, I have to understand what it is. I don't think I'm going to vote for anything that I don't understand. If you're saying that this proposition said you could still sell state land and then give that money to the schools, but it would be limited, and when you sold state lands, that it would go to the schools, or it would be divided and sent to other places too.
Well, okay. I think with that, we'll move to Lauren and give you the chance to respond to the question, Lauren.
Yes, I would vote, and I've been advocating for a clean renewal of Prop 123. We're almost last in the country for per pupils funding, and schools are closing, teachers are leaving, facilities are crumbling, students are suffering. And I've seen the impacts of these cuts, not just in K-12, by the way, but on higher ed. And we need to rein in the ESA vouchers. That's been a scam on the voters and on the taxpayers. And we need to have a clean renewal of Prop 123. We have to end these tax cuts for corporations and data centers and the wealthy, and really find stable funding streams for education, K-12 and up.
Thank you, Lauren. Would anybody like to, we have a rebuttal window here. Would anybody like to say anything more, Bill?
Yeah, I think when she says that the tax monies, there has to be a revenue stream for the schools. The schools have school districts and they issue taxes, and those taxes are approved and by the population, by the people. So rather than have a state program that's funding these school districts, let these school districts fund themselves. They can with property taxes, and it would be fine, rather than have the state trying to fund each of these school districts.
Lauren, would you like to rebut?
Yeah, that doesn't reflect the reality of school financing. And we have a $1 billion drain on our budget and on our schools from the ESA private school vouchers, the expansion. I'm not talking about for special needs kids. I'm talking about the expansion of ESA vouchers that occurred a few years back. It's draining funding. We're having schools close. And we know that the people that most benefit are in the wealthiest zip codes. There's been a lot of misappropriation, waste, fraud, and abuse that needs to be cleaned up. And sadly, we're not going to be able to vote on it this year. But as your state senator, I am going to strongly advocate and champion reform to the ESA voucher system, including bills I introduced last year, which will not allow you to save that money and use it for your private school college education, which is currently allowed under the system.
Okay, well, I have an answer.
No, that's the end of the rebuttal period, Bill. We're going to be moving on. Next, we're going to talk about housing. Short-term rentals like Airbnb and VRBO pay lower taxes than hotels in Arizona. Would you vote to raise the tax on STRs to hotel level rates and dedicate that money to building affordable housing? And this time we'll start with Lauren.
Yes, and Democrats in both the House and the Senate have legislation that reflects this intention perfectly, and I would definitely support it. And I've seen from knocking thousands of doors in my district how deeply short-term rentals are impacting neighborhoods. It's been brought, in a really concrete fashion with a woman who said to me, "Look outside here. Here, that's an Airbnb. That's an Airbnb. That's an Airbnb." And when we had potlucks, it used to be, a couple dozen families. Now it's like 3 or 4 families. We're seeing neighborhoods, threatened by Airbnbs. And when I was on the Tempe City Council, I led a working group because I saw that as an existential threat to our neighborhoods, and that's turned out to be so. It's really impacted the supply of single-family housing for young people who want to buy houses. And so I would certainly support that and have done that in my career in the Senate.
And Bill, would you like me to repeat the question?
No,
Okay,
I understand the question. I think what's happening, and I agree with Lauren, that these rental properties should be taxed at the commercial rate. They are turning, and it's the city governments, basically run by Democrats, have turned our neighborhoods into dormitories. It's not only the Airbnbs, it's the rent houses, the properties that take a 3-bedroom house and turn it into a 5-bedroom house and have cars parked on the lawn, pave over a lawn in Tempe, where when Lauren was on the council, these things started to happen. So in my particular neighborhood, when we moved in, we had a street full of kids. We don't have that anymore. We have a street full of college kids, but we don't have young kids in our neighborhoods. There are some neighborhoods coming back. The neighborhood I grew up in has now become more down on south of or north of Apache. That neighborhood has started to get owner-occupied people back in it again, but it is in a neighborhood that is influenced by ASU, and the number of people that are wanting to rent these properties for students wanting to rent these properties, is just immense. It's an immense pressure on the pricing. It's a fair market value. I understand that it's difficult for people to buy a new house. When I bought a new house, when I was 22 years old, I had to do, it was a special thing for me to be able to get into the house the way I got into the house. Otherwise, I would not have been able to afford it. People will figure it out. Wages will increase, and we will be able to have housing for people.
All right, thank you, Bill. Would anybody like to jump into the rebuttal? Lauren, go for it.
Yeah, so I'm glad that you acknowledge that short-term rentals are a problem, Bill, but it's Governor Ducey that passed that deregulatory law back, 10 years ago. I was on the city council when it happened, and we were advocating very strongly against it. So, deregulation has its costs and its impacts. In this case, it's neighborhoods that are deeply impacted. Like I said, it's really impacting the supply of housing. We have a lot of private equity firms purchasing these homes and using them, for Airbnbs and short-term rentals. This is a problem that the Republicans brought us. And when we gain a majority in the legislature in November, we're going to turn around in January and remove that preemption on cities and let cities and individual communities decide on how they want to regulate Airbnbs.
Bill, anything to add?
Other than the zoning issues that don't know how the state requires or can mandate zoning. If it's a zone for a residential area, that's what it should be. It should be a family rented family property, other than a rental property that has a short-term rental. I think that's just crazy.
Thank you very much. Let's continue talking about housing as it's a key issue in the district. So who, and this is a kind of a conceptual question, who or what do you think is primarily to blame for Arizona's housing crisis? And so it's a two-part question. That, and what is the first bill in the next session that you would push to address the housing crisis? And on this one, we'll start with Bill.
I think the pressure from people moving into Arizona is great, is heavy. And trying to move them into urban populations, it puts pressure on these restricted areas where they can't build anymore. You either have to build apartments up in high density and the infrastructure around that is bad. But there are other communities where there are places that can be single family houses can be built. You have to have the infrastructure. You have to have the restrictions so the contractors can be able to build. The restrictions like in Yavapai County, it costs like $8,000 to $10,000 to get a building permit to build a house. That's just very difficult to deal with. So I think that you need to reduce the restrictions, let the free market work its way out, let people build their houses, or let contractors and developers build the houses. But you have to be careful of the water. You have to make sure that you're not overbuilding what the water can provide. And the Central Arizona project, the Salt River project, has plenty of water in it. So there's no real issue about water. Agriculture takes most of the water anyway. So I think that it's the pressure from population increase that creates the housing shortage, and then it's the demand for that housing, and supply is just not there.
Thank you, Bill. And Lauren? You're on mute, Lauren.
I led the ASU Stardust Center for Affordable Homes and the Family for years, and housing is complex. There's many factors. It's not just about supply. It's about how we have let private equity firms come in and really dominate the market and take away the possibility of even someone buying a single family home. And on City Council, I created an affordable housing impact statement and set policy to make housing a priority. So I think one of the biggest causes of the lack of affordable housing in Arizona is the preemption on inclusionary zoning. So the legislature, I believe in 2014, made it illegal for a city to require a certain percentage of affordable housing or workforce housing in a given development that they were considering. So this is a tool used all over the country to create affordable and workforce housing. In Arizona, it's illegal. So that is the very first bill that I would like to repeal. I've spoken to many Democrats in the Senate and the House. They agree we need to take away that preemption on inclusionary zoning. We shouldn't restrict cities from being able to establish affordable and workforce housing so that, that nurses and firefighters and teachers can afford to live in the communities in which they work. I also would like to see us repeal the prohibition on rent stabilization. There's many successful cases and studies where you can show where cities have rent stabilization boards that they don't completely stop rents from increasing, but they stabilize rents. And so that's another act that I would like to repeal should the Democrats gain a majority, because frankly, it's not going to happen with Republicans because it's not happening. They're not willing to really invest in private-public partnerships. They're not willing to invest in our cities, so our cities who are on the ground, on the forefront of creating housing, they're not willing to let cities have the tools they need to create affordable housing.
Thank you very much, Lauren. With that, let's move on to talking about immigration. You have a rebuttal,
just a short.
Okay.
The states that she's referring to that allow these rent controls and things, those are all Democrat-controlled states. Rent control is not a free market thing.
Lauren, would you like to respond?
Yeah, I'd like to give me some evidence there, because there are many cities that have inclusionary zoning. It's an often used tool, and they may be Democratic cities and Republican states, but it's a tool that's used. And sometimes you'll hear developers say, oh, this doesn't pencil out to have affordable housing. Well, it pencils out in other cities across the country. So it's a very effective tool. And if a city is giving subsidies, giving taxpayer money to a developer to develop housing, then they do have the right, even now, even under current law, to require a certain amount of affordable housing.
Thank you, Lauren. So let's move on now. We're going to talk briefly about immigration. So the question here, what role do you think the state should have in enforcing federal immigration law? And this time we'll reverse order and start with Lauren.
I don't think should have a role. It's a federal responsibility. And I don't, I'm alarmed at the level of agreement that some cities in Arizona have with federal immigration policy. I don't think that's right. I advocate against that. There's so much damage being done by the federal deportation policy. It's impacting communities. I had a young woman come talk to me about how she and her family have 4 bags packed. So they're ready. She was born in this country. She's ready to leave the country at a moment's notice. Should she get the call during, a high school class that ICE is there deporting or detaining her family member? So to me, this is a deeply personal issue because I see my constituents affected every day, and the callousness and inhumanity and the lawlessness of federal immigration policy should be countered.
Thank you, Lauren. And Bill, same question to you.
The lawlessness of the federal immigration policy. These are statutes that are enforced by federal law enforcement.
So, as a reminder, the question is, what role do you think the state should have in enforcing federal immigration laws?
Well, they should assist this federal law enforcement that's doing the enforcement of immigration laws because they have the facilities. The fact that Lauren co-sponsored a bill to make Arizona a sanctuary state tells me, and in part, another bill that she sponsored was to prohibit state agencies from assisting federal law enforcement. The state doesn't have the enforcement capability or to enforce those immigration laws. The federal government does, but they need the assistance of the state agencies to do that. And the fact that a person that's born here, that she has a bag packed because she's afraid she's going to be deported, just isn't borne out by what's actually happening. Everybody that's here that's illegal has committed a crime. Now, they're not all rapists and murderers, but at the same time, they're stealing a job from somebody that is an American citizen. So they are here illegally, and there's no reason in the world why they can't be deported and sent back to the country of their origin. So the state doesn't really have authority to do those sorts of things as a primary investigative and in law enforcement agency, but there's no reason in the world that they shouldn't. They have the jail facilities, they have the holding facilities. When they have people in jail that have detainers, they should be able to turn those over to the federal authorities without making the federal authorities run into these neighborhoods where the terrorism that she refers to happens when federal law enforcement officers are trying to arrest somebody that they're trying to deport.
Thank you, Bill. And we'll open up a rebuttal. Lauren, would you like to add anything?
Where do I begin? So, the overwhelming majority of those who are undocumented, it's not a criminal offense. It's overstaying a visa, and that is not a criminal offense. That is like a misdemeanor, so not defined as a crime. And, I'm a little startled at Bill's inhumanity in talking about the student that I mentioned. When you become, or if you ever became an elected official, you represent everyone that lives in the confines, and people that are living in the shadows are under immense trauma right now. And we're also, if you want to look at it economically, we're hurting ourselves. We're driving people out of our state. That's not good for our state. And, my family came over in the 1880s from Sweden and from England. Many of the people that you're talking about have lived here and their ancestors have lived here since time immemorial for, hundreds, if not thousands of years. And so let's, be sure that when we're talking about people, we realize that we have a common humanity here. And, fundamentally, we need to follow the rule of law. And the majority of people being detained are not criminals, as Bill implied, far from it. And there's been, many deaths associated with detainment and with the immigration policy that Trump has been trumpeting. And communities, individuals are being damaged. Trauma is being engendered in generations of people.
Thank you, Lauren and Bill. Any rebuttal statement?
Well, I think it's pretty obvious that she's advocating for disobeying the law. And I just think that's not the way we want to run America.
Thank you, Bill. Let's move on. The next question and the final question of this round, we're going to talk about water. So most recently, the federal government finalized a 2-year operational plan cutting Arizona's Colorado River water allocation by 760,000 acre feet through 2028. Arizona absorbed the largest reduction among the lower basin states. In that, given what's going on, what are your greatest concerns when it comes to Arizona's stake in negotiating in the Colorado River negotiations? And this time we'll start with Bill.
Well, the water right legislation is very complex, and the water right is been around for a long time. There's been fights over water since forever. If Arizona was late to the game in terms of getting access to the Colorado River water, for whatever reason that happened, Carl Hayden and was able to manage to get the CAP going. This drought has exacerbated this. So how we are able to gain more of this resource will be if there's more of the resource comes. If it doesn't come, we just have to learn how to live with it. And I don't agree that the water is that bad of a crisis. We have water in the Salt River Project. There's millions of gallons and trillions of gallons that are available underground. We just have to learn to get it. The fact that agriculture eats up 70% of the water from Arizona. So your question about how do we gain more water in the legal process from the Colorado River is just going to have to be played out in the courts, and we're not through with it yet, I'm sure.
All right, Lauren, what are your major concerns as Arizona's negotiating its stake in the Colorado River with the Colorado River, and what as a legislator are you most focused on making sure happens?
Well, we have to defend Arizona's interests, and I believe we are coming together in a bipartisan way. We've funded litigation, and we will be funding litigation if we do go to the courts to resolve. The upper basin states are not compromising. California, Nevada, and Arizona are. Nevada's suing. We'll see if we join that lawsuit. But all of this is rooted in the fact that we are in a water crisis. It's a mega drought like we've never seen, worst drought in 1,200 years, and we have to do something to secure water for ourselves and generations to come. I am the Senate Democratic member of the Water Infrastructure Finance Authority. I serve on that, and as an ASU Global Future Scientist, I helped jumpstart the Decision Center for Desert City, which brought together cities and tribal governments and water experts together to draft drought contingency and drought management plans to address the future. And what we need to do fundamentally, I believe in the legislature, is we need to come together and pass a Rural Groundwater Management Act. We did a Groundwater Management Act in 1980. We came together as Democrats and Republicans. It's time to come together again. We've had Republican mayors come up to the Capitol and speak, in press conferences and urge their fellow Republicans to pass a Groundwater Management Act for rural areas. We see rural areas deeply impacted, and we see large corporate entities, oftentimes out of state entities, are consuming a lot of our groundwater to the detriment of rural communities. So we need to pass our Rural Groundwater Management Act, and that is one of the top priorities that we have as a Democratic caucus, and I would hope it would be for the entire legislature.
Thank you, Lauren. Any rebuttal? Bill will give you the opportunity. If not, we'll move on.
I'm fine.
All right, great. With that, we'll change gears. Now we're going to talk about this is our explain your vote portion of this debate. So we're going to be talking about measures on the November ballot. I want to know how each of you would vote and a little bit about your thinking with regard to that vote. We're going to talk specifically about Proposition 319. So Proposition 319 would determine the statewide future of traffic photo radar and automated enforcement systems. It would prohibit state agencies and local governments from installing or using new photo enforcement systems like radar or sensors linked to cameras for speed or red light violations, and would also, at the same time, for governments and local authorities who already use them, grandfather them in to continue using them up until November 2027, when local governments would have to get voter approval via local referendum to keep those cameras running. Here we will start with Lauren. How do you vote on Prop 319 and explain why? You're on mute, Lauren.
Sorry, I'm trying to keep all the ballroom noise out during the breaks here. So yeah,
That's the mute button.
Yeah, I argued against this bill on the Senate floor as well. You have to remember that this is a legislative ballot referral, so the governor could not veto it. And so when your publicity pamphlet arrives, look at carefully who's supporting it, who's opposing it, who's financing the campaigns, and this is important. So I'll be voting no on Prop 319. This isn't just about cameras and traffic tickets. It's about safety. It's about preventing crashes and saving lives. Keep in mind, this is not the license plate readers. Some people get that mixed up. This isn't license plate readers and flock camera technology. That's something different. But automated photo enhancement can really identifies dangerous speeding and red light violations, and even when like an officer isn't physically sitting at the intersection. And I've been a big part of Vision Zero, which is a commitment for cities to have no fatalities, no traffic fatalities or serious injury crashes. We know that photo enforcement saves lives. This is very important to me. I think fundamentally as a legislator, you want to protect people and protect those most vulnerable. And we know that especially in the Phoenix area, we have a rash of crashes and injuries, and it's an epidemic of pedestrian deaths, and photo enforcement will save lives. So I'll be voting no on this.
Thank you, Lauren. And Bill, how would you vote on Prop 319?
Yes, but photo radar, I've received 3 of these photo radar tickets, 2 of them to a car that I didn't even own, 1 to a driver that wasn't me. And my granddaughter, who doesn't even have a driver's license, got a photo radar ticket. Has never driven, doesn't have a driver's license. So how much inconvenience do you want to give to the population for these photo radars that actually, I think they corrupt the courts. The courts don't really, when you show up, if you want to have a hearing and you want to plead not guilty, it's a difficult thing for the average citizen without a lawyer to defend himself against these photo radar tickets. It's just, I have never liked photo radar. The first one I got was my wife in Paradise Valley when she was driving way back in the day, and they would not dismiss that ticket from me. They made me come to court. So I don't like that kind of intrusion into my life. There's 60,000 of those photo radar tickets in Tempe since they started the program recently. They have 4 people managing that. There's no way in the world that those 4 people can manage 60,000 of those tickets. And they're not necessarily, high-speed tickets. These are inches past the red line when they turn left on a red light. So photo radar, if the people want it, that's fine. If the politicians want it, that's not so good.
So just to clarify, how are you voting on Prop 319?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. Well, then with that, we're going to do a very, very quick rapid fire round. Since we're running short on time here, I'm just going to ask 2 questions. These are very short questions. Please, at maximum, keep these to 15 seconds. So first, in a word, what is the single biggest issue facing Arizona right now? Lauren, we'll go with you first.
Affordable housing.
All right, and
It's
Bill?
a crisis in our communities.
And Bill?
I think the influence of the Democrat to turn us into a socialistic state.
All right. And then the next question, what is the best restaurant in your district? And we'll start with Bill.
I go to Manuel's.
Manuel's. And Lauren?
Green restaurant, New American Vegetarian, amazing. Great vegan comfort food.
Green New American Vegetarian. Is that that's in the district?
Yeah, there's two. There's one on Scottsdale Road and there's one on 7th Street next to Nami. Nami is the sister dessert restaurant. It has the best vegan dessert in the country, the soy nami.
I didn't realize there was one on Scottsdale Road.
It's the
Great.
original.
Well, with that, that means we've reached our closing statements. So each candidate gets 90 seconds to give a final pitch to the voters. And we're going to reverse the order of how we started. So with that, we'll start with Bill. You got 90 seconds to give your final pitch to voters.
Well, I had hoped that we would at least have some questions about the culture issues that are facing us as we have larger government, the move toward larger governments, and the Democrats move toward the socialistic states. I had hoped that we would be able to talk about education. There was a brief reference to the ESAs and the fact that it was $1 billion drain on the Arizona economy. There's 100,000 kids that are using that $1 billion. That's $10,000 a kid. The cost is what, $15,000 to educate children at the Tempe in the elementary school districts or in the school districts in Arizona. So I would hope to be able to come to the legislature, have conversations with people about these issues. I'm sure that not all Republican ideas are 100% right. All Democrats' ideas are not always all wrong. There's middle ground, and we need to be able to talk to people about that. I'm not sure that it happens. There's influences. People are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for these elections that were for a $24,000 a year job. Why in the world is that? I mean, I think, Lauren, you've raised $90,000. This is a $24,000 a year job. At any rate, I think that free enterprise always rules out is the best way to solve the problems that we have. And I think that the only way that you can do that is to have smaller government and let the free enterprise work itself out. These data centers if they're putting themselves in neighborhoods that they shouldn't be putting themselves in, they should fail. They should have to go to someplace where they're wanted. Glendale wants it, obviously, because they just
Bill,
annex things.
You're all right. Thank you.
Not too long. All right.
No, yeah, I was just wanted to make sure you knew your time was up. Lauren, go ahead and give your closing statement.
Thank you. So I serve with Brian Garcia. He is your House member. You're going to be hearing from him later. And we're called a dynamic duo at the legislature because we work so hard for our residents and really bringing the interests of our district to the Senate and the House. And I've been proud to speak up and stand up and fight for you day after day. I've championed policies for working families. I've helped kill harmful Republican bills. There's so many of them. And fought against the Trump agenda. And I've done it all knowing I have the great honor of representing Legislative District 8. And Brian and I are very proud to be the only candidates in the race who reject contributions from lobbyists, corporations, developers, utilities, because we want your voices in the legislature, your voices at the table and not theirs. And I want to know how proud I am to have the support of Attorney General Chris Mays and Congresswoman Adelita Grijalva, Sierra Club, labor unions, lots of climate groups. I believe so much in co-governance and bringing people to the legislature who are most impacted by the legislation that we pass. So I work daily with constituents and with organizations who bring to the fore the issues of great concern to working families. If you want to learn more about my background, my record, my priorities, go to my website at qbforsenate.com and let's keep this district represented by an effective, proven progressive. And let's keep QB in the state Senate. I want to earn your vote once more to build an Arizona that we can all afford. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauren. And thank you to both of you for joining us tonight and for the spirited debate. With that, we're going to move on to our candidates running for the Arizona House of Representatives and the two seats that are up for grabs representing Legislative District 8. And so we'll move to, it's going to be the same order as the Senate side debate. ran. So we will first start with Brian. Brian, are you with us?
Yes.
And we're back with candidates for the Arizona House of Representatives for Legislative District 8. We'll begin with opening statements for both of the candidates who are here tonight. Representative Jeanine Connolly was not able to join us tonight, but the two other candidates who are seeking election are here with us. So first we'll start with Brian. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Brian.
Hello, hola everyone. My name is Brian Garcia, State Representative for Legislative District 8, running for re-election. A little bit about me. For my family, education is the American dream. I was born and raised in Arizona by parents from El Salvador and from the Pasco Yaqui tribe in Mexico. Upon becoming citizens, my parents fought to ensure that my brother and myself had access to opportunities. This is my home. I was raised by our community. I'm the first in my family to graduate from high school, college, graduate school, and earn a law degree. I'm a community advocate and a proud product of the LD8 community and an attorney. As a first-generation graduate of our local public schools, I served on the Tempe Union High School District Governing Board as president and vice president, and I've been fighting to protect public education, advocating for pro-democracy policies, representing unaccompanied children, and fighting for affordability for all. As a freshman legislator, I'm proud to say that we've delivered, and we're only getting started. We've passed the turquoise alert, removed barriers for special education and Native students, budget wins like securing millions of dollars for public schools, free school meals, fully funding access, and making the largest investment in childcare, zeroing out the state's highest reimbursement fund, and a 3-year tax exemption moratorium on new data centers. I'm proud to run clean because, as I've said before in other debates and in public, and I will continue to say that I'm tired of working families like mine being sold to the highest corporate bidder. I'm grateful to the earned endorsements of a strong progressive coalition of individuals and organizations that are fighting to protect our communities, putting all of our families first, and fighting for Arizona we can afford. Looking forward to the debate tonight, and thank you, Clean Elections, for hosting us, and everyone at home for joining us.
Thank you very much, Brian. And Dawn, over to you. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the voters.
Thank you. Name's Don Hawker, and I will get right into the things that drive me to run for office. The Democrat Party has been waging war on our country's security, personal safety, and most importantly, morality in their problems with respect for life, property, sexual and marital order, and children's innocence, with pornographic and grooming books in every library and online libraries in ways I find it impossible to understand how anyone could continue to vote for them. It's related to their prime directive to perpetuate their power by destroying ESAs so as to imprison all children in the Democrat indoctrination centers, which public schools have become. If they didn't do anything else wrong, the 4-year treasonous disgrace of forcing Border Patrol agents to violate their oath of office and ship border crashers into locations beneficial to their party. Then when a president abiding by his oath begins to try to mitigate the problem, they encourage rioting and try to provoke ICE to violence so they can cry Nazi. As a programmer, I know computers, unlike people, are quite rigidly logical. To suspend people's analytic faculties requires generating fear anger, lust, or other emotions with such terms as climate change, exophobia, racism, Nazi, and now their ultimate cuss word, MAGA. Let's stick with honesty.
TJ, you're muted.
Thank you so much. So with that, we'll move to our first round of questions. And first, quick reminder to anybody watching, you can submit questions for the candidates at any time. You can email debates@kc-a.com, text 480-769-9511, or you can call 480-937-1253. With that, we'll get to the next segment about who you are. This is not about your policy positions per se, but about the experiences that have shaped you as a person, how you think, and how you would operate when you're in office. You have up to 90 seconds to answer these questions, and there are no rebuttals in this round. And we'll start with Dawn on this round. My first question is, tell us about the hardest period of your life. How did you get through it, and what did it teach you about yourself?
Well, I can't really say that I have had a hard period of my life. I feel like I've been blessed with a lot more than I deserve. I guess I started out pretty slow after high school and worked for $1.15 an hour as a busboy and dishwasher. And then I joined the Navy and finished my math degree, and then I got a job in California, so working for the Navy again as a civilian. So I was a computer programmer for many years, and so we were in a constant learning curve with new technologies and many different projects. And computers, unlike people, are kind of strictly logical. People can be convinced of things by different means, and so I kind of want to treat things in logic and in factuality rather than emotion, and trying to convince people of things that they really don't believe in sometimes.
Thank you very much, Dawn. And Brian, same question to you. Tell us about the hardest period of your life. How did you get through it, and what did it teach you about yourself?
Yeah, thank you. I think I constantly go back to the sacrifices both my parents made as immigrants coming to the United States. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the first one in my family to graduate high school, and that has prompted a lot of issues navigating different systems, whether it be education or healthcare. But for us, I lost my dad to pancreatic cancer a couple of years ago, to stage 4. He was diagnosed in April of 2019 and then passed away in May of 2019. It was a shock that set us up for numerous challenges that we're still facing today, even the medical debt that my mom still has to carry through that. And then recently, my mom suffered a stroke back in April of this year. And understanding how the healthcare system works and what our families are going through. And so those two events in my life have certainly been one of the most challenging, in kind of stepping up and taking care of our family, but also understanding fundamentally how our families are struggling. Earlier in the session, I did a hostile amendment to a really bad Republican bill. I tried to push forward paid family medical leave. And it was shot down, and the Republicans decided to talk about criminalizing feeding pigeons. And I think that was a clear distinction of what, as Democrats, what we were fighting for and what we were pushing for. Families like mine are struggling every single day, and when we're pushing the issues, we get shut down to talk about even more criminalization on things that we shouldn't be even focusing, that our voters do not care about. And so certainly those two periods of my life have been the most challenging, and I remain rooted in those as I continue to fight for our families.
Thank you, Brian. And next question in this round, we want to know, if you weren't running in this race, what would you be looking for in a candidate in order for them to get your vote? And we'll reverse the order again and go with Brian this time. So Brian, what would you be looking for a candidate if you weren't running yourself?
Yeah, I think, even before jumping into this, 2 years ago, and now running for re-election, the one thing that was constantly on my mind was thinking about who's rooted in our community, who has those shared values, who has been fighting on the front lines. For us, both my parents were impacted by Sheriff Joe's SB 1070, and I became an immigration attorney specifically to fight for the children, the unaccompanied children that both my parents were. And so to come kind of full circle, finding who those individuals were and where those shared values are, and constantly pushing for those folks in our community, and those or the individuals that I support even now as a sitting incumbent.
Thank you so much. And Dawn, we ask you the same question. If you weren't running in this race, what would you be looking for in a candidate?
Well, I'm a thoroughgoing Republican. I became so over the pro-life issue, but since I got in, and now I've been a PC for over 20 years, I agree with just about every issue in the Republican platform. And unfortunately, there were no other candidates running. That's why I'm running, but I do favor the more conservative candidates who are constitutionally minded and so forth. I understand that the state has more flexibility than the federal government, which is tied down by the 10th Amendment. But I think they get around the 10th Amendment when they do something that's pretty unconstitutional. They get our money from our taxes before it hits our wallet. And then if we want it back, we have to take one of their programs. So since the state is actually cooperating with it, that's how they bypass the 10th Amendment, and we're at $40 trillion in debt at the federal level. So I think that the state legislators have to look at these federal programs coming back and offering a little money. It's not even usually enough to cover the costs of the programs, but we need to look at, are we cooperating with bypassing the 10th Amendment and doing things that are raising this inconceivably horrible national debt that we have.
Thank you, Don. And then with that, we're going to move on to the next segment of our debate, which is the core issues and policy issues, ones that voters care about most and that are facing the district and the state. So here's the format. I'm going to ask a question. Each of you will get 90 seconds to respond to that. After you've answered, we'll have a 60-second rebuttal window opened where you can respond to something another candidate said, or you can add something that you perhaps forgot to say the first time going around. I may ask follow-ups here, but the first question that we're going to start with is about education. So Arizona schools are facing a crisis of teacher retention. What strategies will you implement to improve teacher retention and ensure teachers stay in Arizona schools? And with this one, we'll start with Don.
Okay, I was following my own high school board, Tempe Union High School Board, for about a year. I ran for school board also. And I just have no confidence whatever in public education as it is today. I think to put your kid in a public education is a very serious problem. And the ESA thing that they're all so concerned about is because when people have the opportunity to escape from the public education system, they do it. And they don't like that. They want to keep them in there. So they'll fight ESAs as much as they can, because it was like anything else with competition, you're going to get better education. When you have a monopoly and you force the people into one thing, financially speaking, then you have poorer education opportunities. Here was the teachers union putting millions of dollars in, trying to put this ESA destroying constitutional amendment in, and they're going to do it again and again because this is their whole principle, is to monopolize education. I looked at Common Core math. I did studies of when they did the book reviews. Their history books are horrible. And this is a problem. Even if you have other schools, it's getting to where these big textbook companies are buying up all the bookmakers, and so they all have an agenda.
Yeah, Don, you've run out of time, but and we'll move on now to Brian. So Brian, what strategies will you implement to improve teacher retention?
Yeah, thanks, TJ. I think, first of all, Republicans need to stop attacking teachers. They're attacking them and their credibility. They're attacking the profession. I think on top of that, we need to start funding public education fully in the state. Our funding formula is antiquated. We're not, adjusting for a variety of things. I think we need to repeal the aggregate expenditure limit that before we can even start increasing the funding, the aggregate expenditure limit needs to be repealed to allow school districts to operate. With respect to ESAs, they are draining our public school system. We have exceeded over $1 billion in fraud, waste, and abuse with zero accountability. I serve on the House Education Committee, where we have introduced bills to rein that in. We have introduced bills to hold bad actors accountable, and not a single bill was heard with this Republican majority. When you take public funds, you should be held accountable to the same standards as everyone else. And charters and private schools refuse to do that. And so there's a whole host of different issues that we need to consider when we're talking about education and how to properly fund it and retain teachers, including passing Prop 123. Republicans refuse to even consider that at the table. And so hopefully with the new Democratic majority, we'll be able to start getting stuff done and properly fund education and rein in ESA vouchers.
Great. Thank you, Brian. We have a rebuttal window open. Would anybody like to add anything further in 60 seconds or less? Nope.
I would make a comment about the Republicans against teachers. There are a lot of teachers I would say aren't good teachers right now. The teachers' unions seem to be more concerned that everyone becomes sexually active than learning math and English and history. It's the whole system that's flawed, and it's flawed because it's been a monopoly. And the minute they see something challenging that monopoly, like ESAs and the ability to get out, they just come up with all kinds of excuses. There's ways, I'm sure, to fix any problems with the ESA system, but they want to get rid of it eventually altogether because it's just against their whole principle of controlling education.
Thank you, Don. Brian, anything to add before we move on?
Yeah, I think it's important to understand the distinction of what ESAs are. The universal expansion is now to the detriment of the original students that it was designed for, which were special education students. Now those students are not getting the care and the treatment and the support that they deserve, and have to find different ways to navigate. At the end of the day, our teachers' unions are actually supporting and fighting for all of our students, regardless of SES, regardless of who they are, regardless of zip code. And so to simply say that there's a monopoly, there isn't. What the problem is that there's no accountability measures in place in statute. And so as I continue to serve and hopefully be reelected to another term, that will be one of my top priorities, especially being a former school board member and leading as president of the Tempe Community School.
Thank you very much, Brian. We'll move on to the second question of this portion of the debate. We're going to talk about housing, another major issue that voters are concerned about in Legislative District 8. Wall Street firms are now owning or now buying tens of thousands of single-family homes in Arizona and outbidding families for starter homes. Would you vote to cap or restrict institutional investors from buying single-family homes, or is that government overreach into the free market? And this time we'll reverse and start with Brian.
Yeah, thank you. I think bottom line, short-term rentals are eating up our housing stock. We in District 8, obviously we have Arizona State University in the heart of our district, and students are being outpriced. I myself cannot afford to live in my district. It has become ridiculous that we're even in this state to be able to have these opportunities for what should be the American dream and has been taken away for so many people. We need to have those regulations in place. We see bad actors come in all the time and rake up the prices. And that leads into unaffordability on so many issues that are connected to housing, whether it be utility rates, et cetera, that we're just, our families are struggling to afford, bottom line. And our municipalities, I continue to work with, whether it be Phoenix, Mesa, Tempe, or Scottsdale. We'll continue to work alongside them to figure out solutions to continue making things affordable and actually have a true definition of what affordability means when it comes to housing.
Thanks, Brian. And then Dawn, to you, and a reminder, the question is, would you vote to cap or restrict institutional investors from buying single-family homes, or is that government overreach into the free market?
No, I don't think I would. I assume that when they buy these houses, they're buying it for investment, but also they're renting them out. So it's not like the house is just sitting there empty and that's not keeping someone out of a house. It may cost more or something, but everybody wants to look to the government to solve all their problems. Like I said, I used to work for $1.15 an hour, and that's not a lot of money, but somehow or another, I always managed to find a place to live. I didn't run to the state to try and find me a place to live. So I think that people need to work with their, families. The government should be the last resort of trying to solve problems. So you should work with your families. You should work with your friends and so forth to solve some of these problems. But housing is expensive, but that's supply and demand. And if it gets too much, well, you might have to move somewhere else. But that's life.
All right, thank you, Bill. Would you like to make any rebuttal, Brian?
Yeah, I would just like to say, working 3 or 4 jobs is unsustainable and is unacceptable to be able to afford a home in our district. That's just wrong. And our community, our residents deserve a quality home with dignity to live in and thrive in and that they can afford. It shouldn't be just available for those folks that are have generational wealth. We should all have access to that.
Thanks very much, Brian. Let's move on then. Next, we're going to talk about data centers. Data centers and tech facilities have quickly become one of the most contentious issues in Arizona. So the question in here is, where do you stand on data centers, and how do you balance infrastructure needs and the benefits that may come from data centers with outcry from local communities who don't want them in their communities? And then we'll start with Brian here.
Thank you, TJ. Generally, I oppose them. I actually introduced a bill this session to repeal the data center exemption, to bring in some pretty much mirrored after the Biden administration that would allow for individual solar panel use for individual homeowners, residential use, particularly on the reservation. I'm a member of the Pasquayaki tribe. And this was modeled after this federal program that was designed for the Hopi Nation up north, the Hopi tribe. Unfortunately, the Trump administration clawed that money back and did not allow the Hopi tribe to move forward, which is unfortunate because there's no running water and electricity up north. And so what my bill would do is essentially expand that to every reservation in the state, but also to individual homeowners and use the tax credit money that would have instead gone to the exemption for the data centers back to individual homeowners to actually have running electricity on the reservation and in places in rural Arizona. I think that they're taking a lot of water. There's clearly data that shows that it's making our communities warmer, hotter. We have exceeded temperatures, right, 115, 116 already this summer, and it's only getting hotter. We do not need any more of that. And I have privacy concerns over a handful of issues. And so in the aggregate, I remain opposed to them. unless they are willing to actually make an effort to meet us where we are and where our communities are, but that doesn't seem to be the case.
Thank you, Brian. And then Dawn, same question to you. Where do you stand on data centers, and how do you balance infrastructure needs and the benefits of data centers with outcry from local communities who don't want them there?
Well, if they're in a commercial district or an industrial zone district, I don't understand what the problem everybody has with having one there. They're no worse than any other kind of thing. To talk about them generating heat is a ridiculous statement. Every industry generates some heat, uses some water. I don't know what all the controversy is, but then again, I don't know what these data centers are even doing. I'd be more interested to know what are they holding in the way of data, and what are they doing with it? Is it something good or is it something bad? But that's not even ever brought up. But as far as the logistics of having another industry in there, I agree with Bill, the Senate candidate, that we don't need incentives for businesses. We need to just let the free market play out on that. But as far as the big controversy over data centers, it's just another business like any other business. I just hope they're not doing something nefarious in there. But I don't know.
Well, yes, I'm. There are obviously some concerns about that as well. But Brian, any rebuttal remarks you'd like to make?
Yeah, just on the waterfront. I mean, we are facing a water shortage. We just saw the Department of Interior release the new guidelines where, yes, we accepted the lower basin state proposal, but we are facing cuts no matter what. Arizona is not a senior water use. We are a lower priority use state, and facing those cuts, it's going to make everything way more expensive, and we do not need to be basically focusing on corporations using our water. Our families are struggling now. Our families need to be focusing on what's in front of them, what we need to make things affordable for them, and not already make difficult decisions or make everything more difficult when it comes to already limited use of resources when it comes to water.
Thank you. Any other remarks you'd like to make, Dawn, in terms of rebuttal?
Yes, I would. I mean, if you're going to make an issue of water, I think you need to bring up numbers and get to realities instead of just getting people all excited about something without some real proof of exactly what you're talking about in terms of the amount. If you're cooling computers with water, you can recycle that water. You don't have to be constantly pouring water into it. So I'd like to see the numbers before I get all excited about something like that.
Thank you very much, Don. Let's move on to our next question of this round. Arizona families are facing higher prices, especially when it comes to groceries and gas at the pump. What is the first thing you would do, or the first bill that you would run when you are a member of the Arizona House or in the next session to help Arizona families grapple with the recent increases in prices and high cost of living? And this time, we'll start with Don.
Okay, well, the premise here is that the government is supposed to solve everybody's economic problems, and I don't agree with that at all. Yes, things are high price, so you buy less, you be frugal, and whatever you have to do. The government's going to start limiting prices or this or that is just going to cause more problems. And I guess I'm kind of a simple person. I just believe that we can do things, as I said, amongst ourselves without the government trying to solve all the problems and creating more.
Thank you, Don. And Brian, give you the opportunity as well.
Yeah, affordability is clearly the top issue of the day and of the year. What comes to mind for me is families like ours that obviously continue to struggle. One of the things that keeps coming up to mind is price gouging. addressing that head first, addressing the incredible increasing costs of insurance costs. Um, you know, so many of our families shouldn't face bankruptcy for an incident that they end up experiencing and then going to the hospital and incurring all this medical debt and going and financially ruining their lives. I'm grateful for Governor Hobbs for her initiative to eliminate medical debt. That has helped so many of our families across the state, so many families in our district. That helps alleviate a lot of the pressures that our families are experiencing, and opens up those funds for actually things that our families can use and thrive on. Holding our corporations accountable when it comes to our utility hikes. There's just today, the Arizona Agenda reported on the political slush fund that SRP has been using, ratepayer money, to lobby members and candidates and who knows what else. And so that's inappropriate, and we should be focusing on taking care of our communities and not exploiting them.
Thank you very much, Brian. Don, would you like to say anything in the rebuttal window?
Well, I think that a lot of our growth in our, it's not just Arizona, the entire country has inflation and so forth, but a lot of people are coming here from states like California that, their whole basic thing is socialism, which, you solve all your problems by coming up with a government program. Well, where does the money come from? We're going to get it from the rich people and the big corporations. And what does that do? It drives the corporations out of California into Arizona. And so now we'll do the same thing here. I don't think that works. And I think you have to use all your resources and not just turn to the government for every solution to every problem.
Thank you, Don. We'll do the last question in this round, and it's going to be about elections. So many Republicans have openly questioned the legitimacy of American elections over the past decade, and polling shows that even Democrats have some concerns about our election system. So my question is, how do you view the integrity of the election system, and furthermore, what election reform efforts actually do have merit, in your opinion? We'll start with Don on this one.
Well, that's a kind of a subject I'm interested in. You will never hear a Democrat accept anything that tightens up the ability to make sure that only American citizens vote. We just had a recent thing with Chris Mays suing Trump because he wants to give us good voter rolls, saying that we don't have a problem in Arizona. Well, we just had our first countywide mail-in ballot election a couple years ago, and over 350,000 ballots came back that the post office couldn't deliver because the person doesn't live there anymore. And she says we don't have a problem. And so I tried to bring that up to the Board of Supervisors, and they just ignored me. They don't care about it. And so will the process improve? It might improve with our new recorder, but I mean, there's nothing in the process improvement to try and make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen. And they never want to do anything that will. They're always going to say, oh, it's going to stop somebody from voting. We got terrible things. We got 30-day voting centers. You can't monitor those. You got countywide voting centers. You can't do a hand recount of a precinct or something when your votes are scattered all over the county. There's all kinds of problems that we have with voting. And I brought this up to the Board of Supervisors, and not one of them returns my email because they just don't care. So I can't prove that there's problems, but all I can say is if you look at the positions of the different people and what they say in the Democrat Party, which will never do anything that will help ensure better quality of voting, you get an idea of who you should trust.
All right, thank you, Don. And then Brian, same opportunity for you. Are there reform efforts that you think actually have merit when it comes to the election system?
Yeah, good question. I think generally speaking, there's always ways to look at our election system and speeding up results. I actually introduced a hostile amendment back in my first session that would include an additional person to count early votes that would come in addition to other things. I think when we're talking about elections, we need to always remember that they're safe and secure. When we're talking about mail-in ballots, over 80% of Arizonans already vote by mail. It didn't start the last election, and certainly didn't start before that either. It's been a stronghold expectation here in the state. There are some other bills that I've introduced that actually do go to accessibility. As a member of the Pasco-Yaqui tribe, I always focus on the native vote. I've introduced bills that would require consultation with our tribes on where those voting locations should be and how to best engage our tribal communities and not leave them out of those discussions. Really looking at, and working with our election directors across the state, working with our recorders across the state. But at the end of the day, I refuse to go back to a hand count situation where Arizona was the national embarrassment when it comes to cyber ninjas. And this is not where we should be focusing our resources. And our focus should be expanding access to vote. When it comes to this sense of non-citizens are voting, that is false in the sense of that it's legally allowed. It's already a requirement in our state constitution that you must be a citizen to vote, which I have issue with the proposition dealing with voting because it's just repeating the same thing that's already in our state constitution. So I think there are ways that you can always refine things along the way, but certainly not without bringing everyone to the table.
Thank you so much, Brian. With that, we're going to move into the explain your vote portion of this debate. We're talking about measures on your November ballot. So I want to know how each of you would vote and a little bit about your thinking and what goes into deciding how you would vote. So the proposition we're going to talk about is Proposition 320. It would require large school districts to spend at least 60% of their operating budget on direct classroom instruction. Teachers, materials, instruction, or anything of that nature. And if schools don't abide by that, or school districts don't abide by that, they would face a penalty in state funding. Supporters call it getting money into the classroom. Districts, including some in this district, say the definition is rigid and would penalize things like transportation, counselors, special education that are critical to education outside of a classroom instruction. So 1 minute here, how do you vote and why? We'll start with Brian.
Yeah, when this came to the floor, I voted no on it, specifically for the reason that you already mentioned, is that this is not, this is a distraction. This is not actually going to money towards the entire public education system. It will be detrimental to our public school system. As someone who served as president of the school board for Tempe Union, these are things that we constantly look at, and this would be horrendous and actually make cuts and eliminate positions despite what the language is drafted and intending to do.
Thank you, Brian. And then Dawn, same question to you. How would you vote on Proposition 320?
I would vote yes. The school administrations are becoming empires, and then they always want to do a bond issue every year. They want to do a bond issue and get more money because they're not getting enough money. And they do bond issues, and they say it doesn't raise taxes, but of course it raises your property tax. I think back to what we call the greatest generation. A lot of those people, like my dad, who was raised in a rural area, probably had a one-room schoolhouse with extremely, probably 1/100th of what they spend on kids nowadays in school. And those people generated the greatest industrial output in the history of the world. It will never happen again. Airplanes, boats, tanks for World War II. they were engineers, like my dad and so forth. That you can do education cheaper than we're doing it and better. And but certainly,
60 seconds are up, so wrap it up, Don.
Okay, so I will vote yes on this.
Thank you very much. With that, we're running up on our time here. So we're going to conclude with that as our last round of questions, which means we've reached our closing statement time. Each candidate gets 90 seconds here, just like the opening statements. And the order is the reverse of the opening statements. So here we'll start with Don. Don, go ahead and give your 90-second pitch to voters.
Okay. It's good to be concerned with all issues, but there is a hierarchy of importance. One might compare only addressing one's parochial issues to a luxury cruise traveler on the Titanic worrying about his stateroom, food, and drink, which will all be on the ocean floor soon. The Democrat Party has demonstrated that there is no evil they won't embrace to achieve power. They proclaim themselves protectors of democracy while trying to undermine the voter-approved proposition that defined marriage as between one man and one woman with their constitutional right to same-sex marriage and birth certificate gender modification bills. Now, I must admonish Catholic Democrats, which comprise 20% of that party, that you are supporting actions defined by your faith as sins crying out to heaven for vengeance. To even endorse abortion or homosexuality is sinful, but voting is an even greater responsibility, especially when your mass defection from this party would end their immoral agenda. We need Republicans to turn out and vote all down the ballot. We can't win with the kind of turnout we had in the primary. If you think Arizona summers are hot and long, you won't like HE double hockey sticks that you'll get for voting Democrat. Remember, Republican yes, Democrat no. Republican yes, Democrat no. Republican yes, Democrat no.
Thank you very much, Don and Brian. Wrap us up.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm a tested and trusted leader in our community. I ask for your support and your vote because there's too much at stake in this election. We see what the Republicans are prioritizing, and we see what our Democratic communities are prioritizing. We have been on the front lines and in the community and will continue to be. We're not taking money from corporations or utility interests. And I'm grateful to earn the endorsements of a strong progressive coalition of individuals and organizations that are fighting for our issues on the front lines. From endorsements from Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays to our Activate 48 coalition, Humane Voters of Arizona, and so many more. I'll spare y'all like I did in the primary. But the choice is clear on education, on our experiences, on housing affordability, on elections, and so much more. The Republicans have governed in the House since 1966 and have failed to demonstrate how they can make things more affordable. My name is Brian Garcia. I'm your state representative for Legislative District 8, and I hope to earn your continued support and vote to continue this fight for an Arizona we can afford so all of our families can thrive. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brian. That concludes tonight's debate for Legislative District 8. Thanks to all our candidates who showed up tonight. And thank you to all our voters for watching, tuning in, and informing yourselves ahead of the November 3rd election. If you need any official voter information, please visit azcleanelections.gov.